September 15th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? To ensure the public's right to be heard, the board has set aside time during the meeting for public comments. The board welcomes and appreciates public comment. The board, however, does not engage with public commentators. The board listens thoughtfully with interest. The board will respond to comments as necessary within a reasonable period of time. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 15 minutes to each subject. Are there any people wishing to make a public comment? Please.
My name is Andrew Nixaji, and I teach mathematics to 8th graders at Middlebrook School. I have been president of the Wilton Education Association for over 20 years. Last week, Middlebrook administration announced that there would be a new schedule at Middlebrook next year and gave some information about the schedule. After small meetings that offered limited information about the proposed schedule, the WEA conducted a survey and asked Middlebrook teachers whether they support the proposed schedule. An overwhelming 90% of the 80 respondents said that they do not support the schedule, and they provided their reasons why. Some frequently listed reasons include: 1, our school will lose 10 qualified, experienced, dedicated teachers. 2, students will not receive a better education by cutting 10 instructional positions in a building. 3, the schedule will significantly cut ELA instructional time, which is a state-tested subject area. 4, the schedule includes a cut in math instructional time, which is a state-tested subject area. With the loss of the probability and statistics course and the introduction of breaks that will be required in the long 88-minute classes, there will definitely be less math instructional time. This flies in the face of the original BOE request, which was to increase math instructional time. 5, middle school students will have difficulty sustaining attention for 88 minutes per class. They express their dislike for the occasional 53-minute classes that we sometimes have. 6, too many questions remain about the vague and ill-defined skills block. 7, the skills block will cause more planning for teachers in a schedule that contains less daily planning time for teachers. 8, the unveiling of the proposed schedule was limited. There was no detailed presentation, and many questions received vague answers, leaving some teachers unable to make an informed decision about whether they support the schedule. 9, the main goal of the proposed schedule appears to be to cut the budget. 10, if there is a need to cut the budget, then positions without direct student contact should be cut. 11, staff has no ownership in this proposed schedule. It was pushed forward without the staff at large seeing it. The fact that only 10% of Middlebrook teachers support this schedule is very discouraging. This should be a time of excitement over a new schedule with 90% or more of us supporting it. We implore you to prevent the implementation of this schedule in the hopes of leaving the schedule as is or finding another schedule that garners much more support from teachers. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Palma. I'm a parent of a Wilton graduate and a current junior in Wilton High School. Good evening, and thank you for having us. As you may be aware, a group of residents recently put together a task force in Wilton to focus on the mental health epidemic facing our children. I'm speaking on behalf of this group here and following up on a letter we sent to you all last night. Dr. Smith, thank you for sharing some of the challenges that the district is facing in recent Board of Finance meetings. These are serious problems with major financial impacts. The work that's being done in the schools today is immense, and the dedication of the staff to help the children is inspiring. Yet there's far more need for the help than there is time or resource to address all of these problems. We are also aware of the mounting financial pressures facing you all. Yet the struggles of so many children and families cannot be ignored. We implore you to remain committed to protecting the mental health services that are currently being provided in the district. Please continue to publicly make the case for more resources in the schools and available locally to residents, but to be funded by the town and potentially by other private sources as well. We look forward to continuing to work with you and the rest of the families in town that are committed to this cause. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mark Shaner. I've got 2 students in Middlebrook in grades 6 and 8. I saw the notice about the proposed curriculum change, and I just wanted to speak up about what I perceive as just a lack of information and clarity about what's going to happen, and some concerns. Really 3. One, the curriculum change talks about the implementation of a skills block without any notification about what academic class this replaces or what purpose it serves or what it achieves. 2, the notice makes note of the fact that there will be fewer certified teachers, and I just don't understand what the evidence is that reduction in teachers leads to better academic outcomes. Again, maybe it's there, I just haven't seen it, and I'd like to. And 3, having done some research in just the last 24 to 48 hours, since I became aware of it, I found some academic papers that say that the block schedule at best is neutral on academic outcomes, and at worst actually reduces both math, geography, and ELA outcomes. And so again, I'm just looking for the evidence, as I believe the board has a policy that any curriculum change should be evidence-based, and I just want to see the evidence because I haven't seen it. All I've seen is a memo that says it achieves a set of priorities, but no evidence that it does. Thank you.
Lucille, is there anyone waiting on Zoom?
Somebody was raising their hand.
Anybody else in the room for a public comment?
Yes. John Priest, 19 Fairview Lane. I want to thank the board for all their work, volunteer work. I live in town with my family, and I've been working with and teaching middle school students for 30 years or so. I'm completely committed to the families and kids in this town, as are many of my colleagues, including my administrators, but I need to make a fuss about this. I'm incredibly concerned about the proposed schedule for the reasons that were listed earlier. What troubles me the most is the loss of instructional time that is coming, that seems motivated by funds and money. For the last 4 to 5 years, the discussion about a new schedule at Middlebrook was revolving around instructional time for math. 50 to 60 minutes of time for math was repeatedly used at Board of Ed meetings. The curriculum administration consistently stated we need more time for math. This schedule cuts math time. There are less minutes in math every week, every month, so I'm wondering what happened. I'm concerned that the answer lies in some of the things we heard earlier this year at the Board of Ed about announcing a $1.1 million overrun and extraordinary budget challenges. The elimination of staff in Middlebrook's schedule of 10 positions, roughly the same amount of money needed to cut in the budget. This is also the same cost, about 1.4, that we spend on the teacher coaching program, which has also fallen under scrutiny. For the love of our students and teachers, please reconsider the coaching program. Roll these valued educators into vacancies within their respective schools, appropriate buildings, which can share the pain of the budget need that we need. We saw last year that teachers at Middlebrook School can have record-breaking standardized test scores in the absence of a coach for a period of time, as well as with them. Pause the scheduling proposal. Please reflect and reconsider the cost of this on many levels.
Anyone else in the room? There will be an additional opportunity at the end of the meeting. Thank you, everyone. Next on the agenda, the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Thanks, Jen. Is there a second? Thanks, Laura. All in favor? Next up is the board chair report. Wilton received some excellent news this week. Wilton Public Schools is the best performing district in the state. We are the highest scoring district in the 21-22 Next Generation Accountability Index. We earned a score of 89.9, which is not only the highest in the state, but is also higher than our last published score in 18-19 of an 85. It is also the highest score we have achieved since 2014-15. Cider Mill has also been named a school of distinction. While Kevin will be discussing the index and the results in more detail later in the meeting, I just want to express what a tremendous accomplishment this is, and one that our entire community can be proud of. It reflects the strength of the entire Wilton education ecosystem, especially given the additional challenge of unfinished learning. The index reflects more than just test scores and graduation rates, but also includes measures of student growth, college and career readiness, and the arts. This accomplishment truly recognizes the work of our outstanding administration, our world-class, dedicated, creative faculty, our involved parents, and our supportive community. We'd like to thank the administrators, teachers, staff, parents, students, and the entire community who every day bring their passion and their dedication to learning and growing, to doing better and being better. And now, budget season is officially underway. On Tuesday, Kevin briefed the Board of Finance on the economic drivers of this year's budget and assumptions. Earlier today, Kevin and several board members attended a budget coffee and conversation at Middlebrook. Similar conversations are planned at the other 3 schools in the coming weeks. Please watch your email for invitations. Prior to this meeting, the first community conversation on budget was held just around the corner in the Wilton High School LLC. The administration is also planning a similar virtual event right after the new year. The date and time will be released shortly. Later tonight, Kevin will present and the board will review and discuss the 23-24 budget goals and assumptions. And on January 12th, Kevin will present a proposed 23-24 budget. Board workshops are scheduled for the 24th and 25th and 26th of January, and the board deliberations will continue at our regular meeting on February 2nd. On February 9th, there will be a joint BOE-BOF meeting, and the board is scheduled to vote and adopt a budget on February 16th. The board encourages participation. Please share your thoughts, questions, suggestions, and recommendations. Come to a coffee or the virtual event. Write an email. We welcome it all. Also underway, and probably more welcome, is the holiday season. This is the last regular board meeting of the year. We wish everyone a restful and restorative break, one hopefully filled with joy and family and friends. Also, having heard the Madrigals perform the other afternoon and knowing full well the talent of all our high school musical students, I encourage all who are able to attend or tune into the beloved tradition that is the Wilton High School Winter Concert, which will be next Wednesday on December 21st at 7:30 in the evening at the Clune Auditorium. Kevin?
All set?
Yes.
Great. All right, terrific. Thank you. So a couple of just bits of good news. We want to just say thank you again to our music staff who have been very busy working with our kids and putting on a number of concerts. A couple of us were together, was it last night, for the 8th grade concert. That was fabulous. The 6th grade concert was a week ago. The 7th grade concert was somewhere in between. A group of us were with the Kiwanis folks yesterday, and the Madrigals performed. They were outstanding. And the high school concerts next Wednesday, I believe. So just hats off to all of them for just wonderful, wonderful work. I think, Ruth talked about the Next Generation Accountability Index, but we have an opportunity, because we have so many staff members in the room tonight, I'm just going to stand up and say thank you. Because we did really well. There's not a lot of good press about schools in general in the national media or in the local media, so we have to take these opportunities to say thank you. And so know that we really, we're grateful. So I'll just leave it at that, and then we can move on to the next item.
Committee reports, teaching and learning.
We met December 6th. We had three items on our agenda. The first was the Wilton High School Continuous Improvement Plan update. Every school in our district has an improvement plan now, and I think maybe monthly, hear from a different school. And this month we heard from the high school. So Dr. O'Donnell, Mr. Keating, Dr. Horn all spoke, and they talked about piloting student goal setting and accountability tracker. I got that correct. There are 12 staff members currently working with students either in an individual class or a unit. Is that correct? And the goal is to have students think of a goal that they want to work on, something other than I'd like to have an A. It has to be more in depth, like what's the process and how do I get that? How can I achieve that? And then later on they'll have some reflective work to talk about how did it work, why did it not work, and whatnot. So far the feedback from the teachers has been really positive, and we're looking forward to hearing more about it later on. Our second item was the Middlebrook schedule change. Joy presented it to us. The committee had reached a final schedule, which we all now know because there's a lot of you here today to hear about it. I'm going to let Joy run with that when it's his turn. And the last thing that we talked about was the survey on coaching impact. After much discussion, we decided upon 2 surveys, one that would go to certified staff who currently has experienced coaching, and 1 to certified staff who has not yet, and asked them about their interest in participating. We were hoping it was going out in December so that we could discuss in January at our meeting, but it will be going out after the new year. So it'll be coming in January. It's really short. There's 4 questions. Most of it's a Likert scale, and there's some opportunity for comments. And that's it.
Chuck, what's the exact date that that's going out? Did you come up with just sometime in January?
I will do it the Monday we get back. Tuesday, sorry.
Policy? Nope, that's Nicola.
We met this week on Tuesday, and I've discussed 25 policies, or reviewed 25 policies. We're waiting for legal confirmation that we can delete 4, or retire 4 policies. 7 are going to come before the board in January. 5 will just require a technical edit and will be on the next consent agenda. And 9 we continue to work on with staff and legal.
Yeah, so we've got a whole large number of our policies that are, it's been more than 10 years since they've been reviewed. And so we're just in the process of continuing to update the policy manual to make sure it's current.
So what are we trying to get rid of?
That's I don't even have the specifics in front of me.
I can email them to you.
Yeah,
I
we
can't
can-
remember.
They'll all come to the board.
Yeah.
So there were some, there were,
Sunday activities.
so there was, thank you. So as an example, there is a policy that speaks to a probation on Sunday activities. And so the question was, does this need to be a board policy? And there were a couple of others like that were written, 30 or 40 years ago. And so just, does it still, is there really a need to have them in the policy manual? So that's why we're, questioning retiring some of these things. They don't really have any real import.
And then business operations met bright and early at 7:30 this morning.
So bright
We noted that while the budget is still currently remains frozen, we are still operating within our appropriated limits. And the discussion mainly focused on
the budget preparation and process. We discussed the main economic drivers of this year's budget, including salaries, healthcare, utilities, and diesel, and the expiration of the federal ESSER grant, and just the overall inflationary effect that the world is feeling. And we discussed continuing to keep the dialogue open and planning out just the future process.
Great.
Next is for you, Kevin, to then Connecticut Next Generation Accountability Index.
Yeah, Don, you want to take a second and just
I'm
top
sorry.
line financial
Financial update,
update?
I'm sorry. I
Just
missed-
a real high top line. As was mentioned, we are still in a freeze. We're still holding that. The areas that we are concerned about are still not favorable yet. We will watch that as we go. We're continuing to daily keep track of expenses that come through to put up a good scrutiny on overtime, any areas that we can in order to maintain as much of the budget as we can so that we can cover the overages that we're expecting to see. Special education outplacement is a little higher again this month. And we did submit our first reimbursement to the state for the excess cost reimbursement. As soon as that number comes back, we'll have a better idea as to how far over budget that line may be. One good news for budget.
Please.
Would you
We'll
like
take
to
it.
do that? No?
Go for it.
The trustees for the pension plan, the defined contribution pension plan, met, and with an experience study and some assumption changes, the contribution that the Board of Education is going to have to make into that plan is significantly less for next year than it was for this year by over $300,000. So that'll help in next year's budget.
Take all the good news we can.
Don, does that ever come back? Like, are we ever going to have to pay more again, or is it's like a one-year only thing?
No, I think that over the next couple of years, it will, as long as the plan stays solvent, it stays strong, and the assumptions don't change and the market stays pretty well. Even if the market goes down, the market had gone down, but there's a smoothing effect over the life of the plan that absorbs that somewhat. It's possible it could go up. It's going to ebb and flow every year based on where the actuaries see. The plan's closed to all but the firefighters at this point, so there's not a lot of new participation in the plan. So they are able to do a good actuarial valuation on it, knowing who's in the plan and where they stand.
No.
Great. So I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I did want to just take the opportunity to highlight, because it is really good news, and it's a reflection of the incredible work committed by our teachers and our staff over the course of the last year around addressing the achievement gap, addressing unfinished learning, and really trying to ensure that our kids are meeting or exceeding benchmark. So just by way of introduction, the Next Generation Accountability Index was introduced, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago. I think it was after the 15-16 school year. And it was the Connecticut State Department of Education's way to provide a series of measures to help understand how effective school districts are at addressing overall achievement, but specifically focusing on students that are classified as high needs. So this could be, kids with who receive special education. It could be kids in poverty. It could be kids who are English language learners. So that the state is really focused on these particular subgroups. So within the index, there are 12 indicators. There's kind of overall performance in ELA and mathematics. There's overall performance in science, and then there is performance of kids who are classified as high needs. So all of those get ranked each year. A target is prescribed to districts, and the districts are expected to meet that target. Beyond the academic achievement, there's also academic growth measures, and this one's really important because in addition to just absolute achievement, we want to make sure that we are growing kids and moving them, those that are, below benchmark, I would say even kids that are above benchmark, but we're always moving them ahead. And so the performance index calls out academic growth specifically, and it's weighted pretty strongly. And then you have some other measures. There's measures for English language learners around proficiency, the state measures chronic absenteeism, and then there are these other categories. One is called preparation for college and career, and so that's the number of kids who are taking college level type courses. They measure the number of students who actually take college level tests and pass them, so like AP tests. And then they have another measure that's they call on track to high school graduation. And then they have graduation rates, post-secondary entrance, and then physical fitness and arts access. I will just tell you, as I've probably said to others before, the arts access one is a mystery to me when you look at how we actually rank and how other districts rank, and then you hold that up against the absolute broad array of arts offerings that we provide beginning in preschool. So we're not going to worry about that one tonight. So I think the primary story here is really around the remarkable growth that our students achieved and demonstrated over the course of the year. And, that was a real testament to our instructional staff, to our coordinators, to our coaches, to all of the support staff that really dug in and looked at how kids were performing academically, and then, really did yeoman's work to provide individualized attention and support to really move kids along and paid attention to their progress over time. And so we watch their progress and performance through the map, and then certainly we saw it on the SBA. So there is I think a lot to celebrate about the work that was done, and it continues today. So I'm grateful for that. When you look through the whole thing, there are other indicators that we do want to continue to pay attention to, and so some of those that I called out for our administrators were our chronic absenteeism rates, and so those were elevated this year. Interestingly, they weren't elevated at Cider Mill, so that was the story around attendance there is interesting, whatever it may be, but they were elevated at Miller Driscoll, elevated at the high school, elevated at Middlebrook, and I think from one perspective, it would make sense. We're coming through COVID, kids are still getting sick, they're having to quarantine, and folks have to be out of school. But we want to make sure that we're doing everything in our power to help kids get into school, be successful in school. So that's a number that we're going to continue to watch.
Kevin, how do you define chronic absenteeism? Is that a certain number?
It's more than 10% of the school year, correct? So that would be 18 days at any point, and it can be a moving target at times.
Yeah.
But it's that's generally the simple definition. The other area that we want to continue to pay attention to is the assessment participation rates. So, for example, Cider Mill was identified as a school of distinction. In addition to, great achievement, great growth, they also met the participation benchmarks. And so if a school doesn't hit the participation benchmarks, even if they would otherwise be considered a Category 1 or school of distinction, they get knocked down to the next category. So the high school did not meet the participation benchmarks. This has been, it's an ongoing challenge. It's not a new challenge. And so, again, just, working through our staff and our families, trying to encourage, kids to participate. We look at these measures. They're important to us. We, they're one indicator of, our progress. So we need to have as many kids as possible participate. The other piece that I would just call out for you that I think is important, the state pays close attention to achievement gaps. And so achievement gaps in math, achievement gaps in LA, achievement gaps in science. And for the most part, we didn't have any outlier gaps, which was great. And that was, I think, as we were looking at the Smarter Balance data earlier in the year, that was one of the observations that we made, that we really closed the gap, particularly between our high needs kids and our mainstream students. And so, it's incredibly challenging, to be able to do that. And, again, I would just say our staff did great work. So I think there was, one area, you have it in front of you. I think it was at the high school. There was an outsized gap. Thank you, in mathematics. So that's an area, just as we're continuing to work through this year, we'll continue to focus on. But, on the whole, I would say really good news, a tremendous reflection of the work of our staff, and we're going to carry forward. So happy to take some other questions.
Next up is Wilton Reads, and we have Fran here, and colleagues as well.
I was Carolyn here, she's great. So,
I got very excited about this.
yeah, has everybody had the opportunity to meet and say hello to Caroline Mandler? She's our new executive director of the Wilton Library Association. So, Caroline, we've spent a lot of time together in the last few months. So, Caroline, welcome to your, I think this is your first Board of Ed meeting.
Yes, welcome.
Great, so thank you for having me. I'm Caroline Mandler, the Executive Director of Wilton Library, and thank you for welcoming me to speak with you about this year's Wilton Reads. So now in its 17th year, Wilton Reads is a highly anticipated annual community reads event, and we are proud that it has now also become an essential collaboration between the library and Wilton Public Schools. So both at the library and in the schools, we now build on a single book selection. Fran has a visual aid to offer a broad range of programs for all ages related to that book's themes. So over the past several years, we've invited the community and students to explore important topics such as the Holocaust, jazz and the Jazz Age, racism, and last year, the history of Wilton. So now it's my pleasure to announce that this year's book will be Vigil Harbor by Julia Glass. Julia Glass is the author of 6 previous books of fiction, including the best-selling 3 Junes, which won the National Book Award in 2002. She's also the recipient of fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts, the New York Foundation for the Arts, and the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study, and she is a distinguished writer in residence at Emerson College. So Vigil Harbor is a contemporary novel. It was just recently published in May of 2022. And we selected it for this year's Wilton Reads because it builds on last year's discussion of community while also acknowledging the instability of our ever-changing world. It is set 10 years in the future in a small coastal community in Massachusetts where residents are struggling with post-COVID changes and difficulties, including climate instability, political violence, and domestic upheavals. The New York Times Book Review called it sprawling and engrossing. Glass is a masterful builder of fictional people, an expert at charting the architecture of entire lives. Vigil Harbor transcends the mood of collective but cloistered worry and becomes a novel about what remains. So there will be many opportunities for discussion and learning, and we look forward to collaborating with the schools and the community. I will now invite Fran Kompar to share with you some of what's planned for the Wilton Public Schools.
Thank you very much. So it's my distinct privilege to represent Wilton Public Schools in this collaboration with Wilton Library Association and the Community Reads program. And it's my honor to announce the selection with my new colleague at Wilton Library Association, Caroline Mandler. I would like to thank Carolyn and that entire team in the Wilton Library for their collaboration, professionalism, and kindness. And I always look forward every year to working with them on this. This is our 5th year of engaging all members of our community, including our students, in learning and discussing about an important topic based on a common book that the adults are reading along with the students. This year's selection of Vigil Harbor is very appropriate to the times we live in. It's set in the not-too-distant future, and it's a story of a post-pandemic uncertainty. Imagine that. It's about a sense of community, and present throughout, there are concerns about the environment. There are echoes of there are particular foods that no longer exist, like almonds, for example. Typically, Wilton Reads programming takes place in April, and our schools also celebrate Earth Day as part of that month. So we felt that this year it will be a really great opportunity to tie the two together and to really promote the whole idea of engaging with students and how they can become stewards of their environment with the books and as part of the Wilton Reads celebration. In fact, the timing and theme will provide us with a very rich selection of books that explore the power of community as well as how students can do their part to make our environment a better place through the power of stories. Our library media specialists and the Wilton Library Association librarians will meet to discuss the programming for this year's Wilton Reads. As in previous years, we will do a variety of different things. We will engage our digital video students who have in the past created documentaries, short clips. Like last year, they did something on Wilton and the community. We will bring in authors as available, and we'll partner with community organizations. As you can imagine with this theme, there's a lot of rich possibilities within our community, whether you're talking about Ambler Farm or other organizations that will really work very well with this. We are beginning to develop our book list with titles that will be appropriate to the grade levels that we're talking about, and we'll have it all complete by February and publicize it at that point. I really, at this point, would like to also recognize our school PTAs who have always supported our efforts with Wilton Reads in the past years, and we look forward to this collaboration for this community-wide conversation. Thank you, and I think we have something for the group here, and I can help you with it.
Oh, sure. We brought books for not for everyone, sorry. Check it out in the library.
Thank you. So fun.
I know, right? Seriously, I'm always
It's a serious
3
thought.
seconds.
I'm sitting like in the car at home.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to meet you.
Yeah.
Early Hanukkah.
Yeah, there you go. So, Caroline, thank you. Fran, thank you. So we look
Thank you
forward to
both.
it. Yeah, we really
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
Yes, thank you.
Middlebrook schedule. Whatever's
Come
more
right up.
comfortable. Yeah, come on up.
This one.
I was trying to make us closer, but it wound up also longer, so, we'll keep working on it.
The condensed version.
You're hired.
So, good evening, and thank you for this time to share a little bit of the background and the work that we've been doing to finding the bell schedule for the 23-24 school year. I also asked Trudy and Karen to be here tonight to help me answer any specific questions, so I just want to give a thank you to them for both being here tonight. So, Lucille, if you don't mind going to slide 2, just wanted to give, by way of background, a little piece of history, and that is that Middlebrook School originally opened its doors. It was a junior and high school, meaning grades 7 through 12. And in September of '71, students in grades 7 and 8 remained at Middlebrook, while the students in grades 9 through 12 moved down the road to the then newly constructed Wilton High School. And then in 1993, grade 6 students transitioned to Middlebrook from Cider Mill. So with only some slight variations, the same bell schedule has been followed for as long as then, really for as long as we can remember. It's about 30 years now. So as you know, a schedule change at Middlebrook has been discussed and considered for a very long time. I joke about being part of a scheduling committee for a better part of my Wilton career, more than I'd like to admit. And staff have been reviewing schedules for many years. A common theme throughout all of these scheduling committees has been preserving the team concept, which is very important for this age group. Regarding some of those most recent efforts, certainly most recently in 2019, we met with consultants to explore schedule options, and typically what the consultants told us was that we do too much. We have too much in our schedule. We need to get rid of something. In 2021, we included Dr. Marie Alcock, who I know the board knows, and we explored options that she shared quite literally from all over the world. gave us a perspective that was very helpful. That certainly included schools in the U.S. as well. And then this year, we collaborated with administrations across the area. Specifically, one is with Roger Ludlow in Fairfield. That school is going through some growing pains of a new schedule that they just adopted. But in over 20 middle schools in the tri-state area and almost every school in the southwest Connecticut area, administrators are trying to find a new bell schedule for their schools. All of the schedule work is grounded in doing our best for the social, emotional well-being of students and to help them achieve academic success. So slide 3. Our middle school is designed, this is more along the philosophy, designed to meet the needs of adolescents who are making that transition from childhood to adulthood. You've heard me talk about the development of the lifespan in those 11 to 14-year-olds, and it's only surpassed by birth to 3. We're dedicated to developing an interdisciplinary education program focused on the special needs and interests of early adolescent. It's our belief that the 3-year team program believes the atmosphere for fostering growth, self-discipline, and direction. Our education process also emphasizes experiences that encourage independent learning, motivation, the continued development of basic educational skills while applying them to areas of new study. Students are involved in a program of diversified academic and creative experiences, and our program provides an atmosphere that's intellectually challenging and recognizes the students' physical, emotional, social, and academic needs. These needs focus on the fact that development of the early adolescent occurs in stages. It's our firm belief that the middle school philosophy can best be implemented through cooperative decision-making of all personnel, parents, and our community. That's why this presentation is an important next step in communicating that thinking. Middlebrook School provides an environment to enable the student to develop. I point to the portrait of the graduate, and I won't read these all to you, but intellectually, emotionally, physically, socially, ethically. I think we've been through that enough. Certainly the board has to hear that. But I just want to highlight the mission statement, which is on slide 6, Lucille. And Middlebrook School is a safe, nurturing environment, provides our community of learners with the foundation necessary to contribute to a rapidly changing world. So, slide 7 starts to get to the purpose. At Middlebrook, we believe that a different bell schedule will better meet the needs of our students. At the forefront here is to keep the students' best interest at heart. The intent is to maximize instructional time and the opportunity for our teachers to personalize learning for our students. It's a priority that the existing successful team concept remains intact, as this structure best suits the needs for this age group. I hinted at this a moment ago, but as a member of the Southwest Connecticut Principals Group, as well as the Tri-State Area Principals Group, I know that middle schools in all of these school organizations are researching ways to change their bell schedules, and really for various reasons. Some want to capture more advisory time. Others want to reduce advisory time. Get the idea already, right? Some want to capture more time for fine and performing arts, while others want to cut that. But mostly, they're looking for ways to increase teaching time or time with students. We're facing the same issues of trying to do more without expanding our day. Additionally, we sought to ensure that our bell schedule supports the vision of the graduate, our vision and mission statements, and the 21st century learning expectations. So if you go to slide 8, please. So some of the process, just to let you know how we got to where we are today. There were a number of committees that were formed and that actively reviewed bell schedule options, especially during the past 4 years. Multiple meetings were devoted to reviewing different options and delving into how those options serve the needs of our students, making it Middlebrook friendly, if you will. We created organizational tools and research to curate models and share information, and we researched many, many models, and those include 4-period days, 5, 6, 7, 8, even 9-period days schedules, and variations on a traditional model or a traditional schedule, rotating and drop period schedules, modified block schedules, as well as block schedules. And our committee members evaluated and presented pros and cons of those various schedules, and frankly, there are pros and cons to every single one of those schedules, including the one I'm going to present tonight. So if you don't mind going to slide 9, Lucille, thank you. One of the many things the Bell Schedule Committee was charged with was personalizing a Middlebrook schedule and creating longer instructional periods, especially for math and English language arts, while combining the writing workshop and the reading workshop into one ELA class. In addition, trying to capture the instructional minutes by having fewer transitions during the day that would lessen the travel time to allow for deeper personalized learning for students. I'll talk about that a little more later. As I mentioned, the committee carefully examined and objectively evaluated the pros and cons of dozens and dozens of schedules. And in fairness, some of those are immediately eliminated. For example, if there was a model that had a 40-minute period, we knew that was a non-starter, or if we knew that it was going to predominantly cut the way we deliver our fine and performing arts, we did not go too much farther in those. But some of the examples of the more recent schedules that we considered are reducing to partial teams. For example, if there were only 4 classes on a team at a time. And one of the reasons for why that was dismissed was it creates too many non-compliance issues for our students with special needs. 60-40 block, which means that there'd be some classes that go 60 minutes, some classes that go 40 minutes. And one of the problems that creates is it creates a tracking issue where if you can imagine, students that are in the 60 can't be in the 40 at that time, so therefore as it rotates through the day, you're going to track kids into blocks of cohorts of kids in the same class. We also looked at an 80-40 block in hopes that the idea that the 80s would offset 2 40s, but it also created some of the same issues of tracking. And it also created quite a discrepant teaching minutes for staff. Became a difficult way to try to create a schedule that was going to be somewhat equitable across the board for our teaching staff. Dr. Alcock, as I mentioned, with her worldly experience and her approach, brought a wealth of experience and brought, Fran, you saw them, quite a few different ways of looking at a schedule that included multiple options Monday through Friday, or even over the course of a couple of weeks, and really just very flexible, but also confusing at times. Dr. Isabel Stevenson provided a level of insight in teaching and learning, and I think you all know who Dr. Stevenson is. She's director at the Connecticut Center for School Change. We looked at schedules with or without a skills block. We looked at student life, the continuity of classes versus a break in the day, kind of a day in the life of the students, and also the importance for connections to trusted adults. We also looked at the adult experience, the same concern, really the day in the life for the adult and what that would be like. And then the value of tutorials or study hall. If you will, a teacher's vision of a help desk and a student's ability to take that breath during their day. So all of this research and time, I know I didn't do it justice, but I'm kind of racing through that part of it, but led us to determine that the block schedule would be the best choice. As Dr. Stevenson would say, it needs to be about the learning targets and what students are expected to do and what those learning and teacher moves are going to be to make, that they need to make, not necessarily how long it will take the students to complete that thinking, learning, doing. Anecdotally, she shared, it was this morning I think, that she shared that she's never been asked how long she needs to deliver a professional development. It's just more about what's the learning outcomes that are to be expected. If you don't mind moving to slide 10, Lucille. So, much to do about, let's look at it. It basically shows and consists of 4 90-minute blocks. That's an estimated about 88 minutes if we include passing time. And lunch is embedded in the 3rd block. So if Lucille, if you don't mind clicking on that link to expand this a little bit, and this may be a little difficult to look at, but I'll just do a quick hit on it. And that is the academic periods meet every other day. Stride is very similar to our present schedule in its offerings. Full-time teachers would continue to teach 5 sections. Stride teachers would continue to teach 6 classes a day. And Lucille, if you don't mind going down to where it says that 5th section, which is teacher-facing, right at the top. And I don't know if you can make that bigger for folks to be able to see it all. Might make life a little bit easier to see it. So even if you go to the top where it says that the scale, make it
Lucille, if you go to
something like
view.
150%.
Yeah, underneath view, yeah.
And then just scroll down a little bit. So where I'm focusing our attention is if you can look at the block that in the top left corner it says skills on the left side. I can't read the line.
28.
Thank you. Line 28. So that's really where I'm trying to focus us right now. And really what it does is it just gives a visual to try to break up the 90-minute blocks into the 2 45-minute segments, really for explanation and easier reading. It allows us to have 2 strides classes in that 90-minute block. It also allows you to see how we can potentially break up the skills block. And it's probably worth talking about that skills block for a moment. For our special education student, it allows us to remove that forced choice, something that we've talked about quite a bit. Most of our special ed students are forced to choose between world language and an academic lab, for example, and this would remove that. For students receiving intervention, we're looking into reducing the times that would force them to miss stride and their support. Meeting with the interventionist this week, they expressed some concern there that we're going to need to look at now a little more. The skills block for 55 or 60% of our population, which is really our gen ed population that's not going for that extra support, we need to build that together. So the opportunity here is for the skills group, is for enrichment, passion projects, check-in with students. Our race to the day and right now feels rushed. This benefits our students' mental health. A parent shared with me when we were talking about it that she observed her daughter move to a block when she moved to the high school as being a very positive opportunity for students to be able to take a breath and catch up. And was also expressed that it was the same was true for the teachers. But we need to look beyond the high school, as this parent mentioned, the creativity, the time to engage, with the understanding that early on that this could be messy in the beginning. We need to look at what's best for an educational experience in the long run. But to me, that skills block is a funnel-wide open opportunity. We have been looking for a time to build in transdisciplinary work, passion projects, capstone opportunities, enrichment. The skills block will provide that opportunity. It'll provide an opportunity for students to access their teachers as they need, or as the teacher needs, as circumstances dictate. For example, they're working on an essay, they're working on an assessment, or they just need to be a check-in. I'm really excited about the possibility of the skills block, but I recognize it can't be a glorified tutorial. And I'm leery of adding an additional prep period for our teachers. As a staff, we're going to need to go back and discuss that plan together to best use that time, and understandably, the teachers have questions about that, and we're going to work on that together. Some of the rationale for the change and some of the reasoning behind the work. As mentioned, the committee began to look at alternative schedules and a number of pressing reasons. Again, keeping students at the forefront when it comes to preparation. With the current schedule, each student must prepare nightly for the next day's 6 academic or 8-period schedule. Our teachers are masterful at capitalizing on every minute of that 41 minutes. And our 41-minute classes don't always allow for our students to complete collaborative work in class, or allow for a deep dive or in-depth investigation of ideas, or certainly not enough time for engaging in projects. Our teachers' 40 or so minutes of planning periods, by the way, they might also need to be able to run to the restroom in this time, often don't allow them meaningful or built-in collaborative time with their peers that teach similar courses to ensure assured experiences across the curriculum. With common prep times, teachers will have that option. Right now, more likely it's spent as time providing extra support for students who request it or they need it for that kind of follow-up or support. We're going to need to go about this change planfully. I recognize that, and we need to lean on different folks as we do that. One of the benefits is that we can lean on our high school staff. Recently, they went through this process. They changed to a block schedule in the 2019-20 school year. But professional to professional, that can be a wonderful resource. That's right here for our professional staff. I believe it was referred to as a watershed moment when the professional staff at the high school were able to do the same with folks who came here from Fairfield. We need to visit other middle schools who have block schedules. And I promise the board that I won't take advantage of those schools in California that have block schedules, but some as close as Norwalk, Danbury, Stafford, Torrington, Stratford, North Haven. Recognizing that there are going to be initial difficulties, no doubt we'll struggle to get out of the gate, and I expect this change will be worthwhile. At a recent Board of Ed meeting, our high school students voiced their preference for being able to focus on fewer subjects during the school day, and then again the added benefit of adjusted homework expectations. The Wilton High School counselors reported marked decrease in the number of students reporting stress or anxiety specifically about the schedule. And Wilton High School teachers spoke on how much more calm the building was, noting that they saw no new problems with students' retention of ideas, even though they met every other day. Now, I'm not trying to indicate for a moment that our students are stress-free. Ultimately, it was just the schedule itself was the point I was trying to make here about not causing a stress for the high school students. At Middlebrook School, we need to build on our years of success while looking at different ways to make school more effective for students in the 21st century. The block schedule offers several opportunities to enhance that teaching and learning. I thought it'd be helpful to get some of the why we're doing that as well. It may feel a little bit redundant right now, so forgive me for that. But some of the issues with the current schedule, some of the why of what we're getting at is the delivery of the illustrative math curriculum. Presently, Students' Day consists of 8 periods, 8 classes. The 41-minute class can mean a rushed pace in the classroom. And despite the heroic efforts of our staff, it's challenging to fully differentiate instruction or dive deep into the learning. It's just not enough time to dive deeply into the course content in those teachable moments, if you will. Teachers don't have enough time to provide individualized attention to students in just those 41 minutes. As they usually do, teachers go above and beyond the class time to be able to do and provide that kind of attention. Our present schedule provides requires more time, I should say, to move a large group of people through the building. Bottom line, transition time. We spend about 21 minutes on a regular day just moving people around the building. No schedule is perfect, as I mentioned earlier. There are certainly pros and cons to this one. I thought I'd run by a few of those with you right now. Potential concerns with the block schedule. Classes are about 88 minutes long and have the potential for attention or engagement issues for students. That's going to require some professional learning on our part. On some weeks, teachers will only see classes twice a week, and then they'd see them 3 weeks the following week. That's provided there were no weather interruptions. Professional learning is going to be needed. What does an 88-minute class look like in a middle school? Coverage of that content can be challenging, so teachers must plan effectively to cover depth and breadth of the material. Classes that are missed for illness or for weather could have a greater impact than on our present schedule. In conversations with Middlebrook teachers, they've expressed concern over this schedule. I've captured those top three concerns. One is the emotional component, the idea of losing family members, colleagues that they've worked with. That is hard. I share that concern. They've expressed concern about the timing, and that timing of an 88-minute period. What does that look like? What does that mean? I think that the work ahead of us will help answer some of those concerns. And they certainly have expressed concern about what is that skills block? What does it mean? Does that mean that's going to be more work for me, and how do we try to manage that? There's also been an expressed concern that the new schedule might have a negative impact on student performance and standardized tests. And frankly, I disagree with that, because I have faith in our teachers. I have faith in our students. Certainly, if we move forward in the exact same fashion as we do now in our existing schedule, scores could also decline. But I have every faith in our teachers that will utilize this new time in a way that's beneficial for student learning, because we now have the continuous minutes we need to implement our instructional framework. I think there's a perceived impact of school climate relative to this kind of change. I mentioned the idea of missing colleagues, the impact of change of FTE. Change creates an obvious impact on climate. Asking teachers to give up what they know and how to do it impacts their own self-efficacy. Confident in what I do right now you're asking me to change that sort of feeling. Understanding and learning how to teach in a model that's different than you're used to, it's hard, and I just want to acknowledge that. Supporting students through that change also is something that we need to be cognizant of. Some of the pros for the block schedule. Research tells us that 1 in 3 middle schools across the country use block schedules. It lessens the stress level on everyone. It's not as frenetic a pace. The class order is more predictable. With an alternating block schedule in which larger chunks of time are dedicated to meeting every day, students will be able to better focus by only preparing for classes that meet that day. During those periods, students can enter the day's learning with the confidence that they'll have time to fully engage in that class's learning targets or objectives to achieve deeper learning and understanding of the content. There'll be more time in class designed for learning tasks and targets to complete tasks required through inquiry, research, projects or presentations, science labs, reading, independent practice, or even Socratic seminars. Teachers can introduce material, model skills, and have a greater opportunity for guiding student practice and for directing student collaboration within one class period. The teacher can check in and confer with more students in one-on-one or single periods in greater depth, rather than spreading that out over several sessions. Block scheduling promotes the opportunity for more cooperative learning as well as more individualized or differentiated instruction. Students will have more time to reflect and process information. The opportunity to build more quality time from an SEL point of view is certainly evident in this opportunity. The opportunity to build more quality time. There's just a more simple and straightforward schedule. The possibility for time to complete assignments during class. The possibility of an impact on our homework. 2 days for students to do homework. Some of our math teachers question that, wonder if that's still possible, so we'll need to unpack that a little more. And our responsibility as a middle school is to prepare these students to move forward. The schedule will be similar to what they'll see at the high school. I have some parent anecdotal comments that I'll pass on for just now, but teachers who wish to visit other schools that run a block will be supported to do so. If many teachers want to do that, and I'm guessing they will, then we'll need to stagger those visits to make sure we have adequate coverage. There's been an ask of whether or not there'd be a pilot possibility, if we could run a pilot of this before the end of the school year. I'm not sure we can do that without rescheduling all our students, although Dean Whalen and Dean Koalis, who's in the room, thank you, Toby, for being here, they think that there's a way to pilot this, and we'll work on that possibility. And it's important to me that we provide that professional learning that we need to give our teachers before we do a pilot, really to make that pilot worthwhile. Do I know how to do it before I can do it, before I actually deliver it? And then the benefit is the timing. It's the middle of December. We're not talking about putting this in place until next August. So I think we have a fantastic runway to really try to pull this apart and properly prepare the schedule. As far as plans for some of that professional learning, Middlebrook teachers will have that opportunity to learn about the block schedule. I mentioned how we can tap into the expertise of the colleagues at the high school, and also for Middlebrook students to share their experience. It certainly was valuable. I mentioned this before about the Fairfield group coming in. We understand that there's a difference between middle school students and high school students, but this is a professional-to-professional piece. And as I mentioned, we're looking at the opportunity to have our teachers visit other schools that run the block, to observe classes, to see it in action, to speak to teachers who deliver it in a block, to meet with students, to talk to them about how that's going for them. And then teachers who aren't able to visit will certainly have that opportunity within department to speak to the teachers who did visit. And obviously, there's a reality that we don't have too many folks out of the building at one time for subs. Our admin, our teachers, our coordinators, our instructional coaches will research block scheduling methodologies, teaching methodologies to prepare to support teachers in the instructional shifts that will be required. Teachers will spend time in department, in their IETs, during the remainder of the school year, focused on the instructional shifts required to deliver lessons in a block schedule. And by the way, we still have our day job. We still have the practice of teaching and learning that focuses on the well-being of students and their academic achievement this year and now. So in addition to the professional learning that I just outlined and the observations, etc., there's other work that needs to be done, and that is we need to create the modified schedules for when we have assemblies, when we have testing schedules, anytime there's an interruption to our regular days. What will we do during delayed openings and early closings? The need to reset the day when we have a snow day. So, for example, when we want to make sure that a discipline isn't skipped for too long an extended period of time, and just determining how we want to handle that reset, the impact over 2 days. So, Lucille, if you don't mind going to slide 12. Really just want to take a moment to talk about the communication of the discussion. And here it is, thank you. So the administration ensured regular communication to staff about the process and the progress during regular updates at staff meetings, opening the scheduled meetings to everybody. We've given updates at PTA meetings, at teaching and learning committee meetings, and at Board of Ed meetings. While all staff were welcome to join or observe the Bell schedule meetings, the meetings were held after school. So that created a difficulty, certainly, and it limited some folks' availability. And the scheduling meetings happening during the day certainly was difficult to accomplish. The board and I have certainly heard from concerned parents about the communication of this information. And I just want to highlight some of that process so that it's clear why we're here tonight. Obviously, there's a need to do this in order, and this meeting is just another step in that order. The scheduling committee work led to a recommendation. Then we met with our instructional leaders, our leadership in our building. That led to then a staff meeting with the staff. Followed that up with meetings with small groups to provide Q&A, answer questions that were asked, provide any more clarity where there needed to be. Met with our classified staff and support staff to do the same. Met with our PTA leadership and parents. Tonight, Board of Ed presentation. Moving forward, there's going to be sharing more on the block schedule and the Friday letters from me every week. We'll hold forums, not unlike coffee with the principal, moments for parents who'd like that opportunity. In addition, the Friday letters and this in-depth proposal, along with members of the scheduling committee, will hold informational sessions with students before and after school, informally at lunch, in the hallway as well. So a lot of times you get a lot out of them if you don't have a sit-down, let's talk about it sort of moment. So in conclusion, and I know, thank God, you're probably thinking maybe he'll stop talking now. Scheduling committee researched and reviewed multiple models, both schedules that exist elsewhere and some of our own creation. As I mentioned earlier, it included many different models, and each was evaluated for its effectiveness and appropriateness for our students. We laid out clear goals of what we needed to accomplish in those schedules. The A-B block was the only schedule that checked those boxes for us without forcing us to sacrifice programs like world language and our stride offerings that we see as vital to our middle school program. The A-B block was the only schedule where there was an agreement with the scheduling group, the leadership, and the admin before presenting it to the staff. And based on the preceding rationale I just gave you, and the change and the benefits of the alternating block schedule, and once we've completed the planning work that needs to be done, as I just outlined, and the professional work that's needed, I believe that Middlebrook School should adopt the alternating day block schedule at the beginning of the 23-24 school year. So tonight was a chance to bring this schedule public so we can begin that process of conversation, development for all our stakeholders. And I thank you for your attention and happy to try to answer questions.
Hey, George, thanks. Do you mind? Can we just ask Karen and Trudy to come up and join you? Because there are two really big questions that I think they're probably best positioned to answer.
I hope that wasn't too long.
It's helpful. So one of the questions, so just as Jory highlighted, most recently, one of the driving questions here that has led for this years-long exploration is around mathematics. And so we're currently working with the illustrative mathematics equipment. You've heard, from Trudy, going back years, that the amount of time we have is insufficient. So Trudy has looked at this. Trudy, would you speak to the relationship between the IM curriculum, the requirements of mathematics, and the block schedule proposal, please?
Sure. I'll try to do it concisely and as clearly as I can. As you know, or you may not, IM is what is characterized as a problem-based curriculum, where students learn by doing the math. It's designed with a focus on independent, group, and whole class instruction, and it's developed across a three-part framework. One is the invitation to the math, which is the warm-up, the deep dive, which is exploration, and the consolidation and application, which is known as synthesis. And according to Diane, they describe synthesis as where the magic happens. Unfortunately, in our current schedule, we don't have enough time to make magic. IM requires about 8,000 minutes of instructional time to deliver 9 units. We currently have 7,380 minutes. The proposed block schedule would provide 7,920 minutes, which would allow us to deliver the current 8 units of instruction that we entertain now. I want to make it clear that it's not just about the total minutes, it's how we use those minutes that's vital to delivering the curriculum with fidelity. And that means having the time to engage in the instructional practices that quite simply take more time. Engaging students in discourse, giving them time to grapple, giving them time to discuss with partners, collaborate with partners, come back, practice. None of those things can be achieved in a 41-minute time frame. The teachers at Middlebrook have gone above and beyond to make what they have available to them work, and they've done it exceedingly well. I think it's time that we allow our students to get the full benefit of this program by giving us not just more time, but an arrangement of time that enables us to do the work that needs to be done. A little bit of background, I spent a fair amount of time on the phone with one of the curriculum developers yesterday. IM has a block guidance schedule. They developed it explicitly because about half of the middle schools that they work with have some form of a block schedule. Their block schedule assumes 90-minute blocks and uses 65 to 80 blocks per year. That's kind of the broad picture. I spent a big chunk of the last 2.5 weeks sketching out lesson by lesson the curriculum in the block schedule, and by my calculations, we have depending on the lessons. Now, the lessons, mind you, they're block lessons, combine parts of 2, sometimes 3 lessons, all addressing the same learning target in order to kind of give students a chance to gain that learning over a longer period of time. We would probably have a cushion of about 10 to 15 blocks, depending on which grade we're talking about, for teachers to use to go back in and provide review days, individual practice days, and just even an additional more time. 6th grade curriculum is the most packed. We know that the Common Core arrangement in 6th grade is full, and it introduces the most new topics in the middle school curriculum. But even with that, the block schedule does allow us to achieve the goals that we need to achieve. It allows teachers to shift their instruction to facilitate student learning with those high leverage routines. And these shifts at the same time allow students to adjust their cognitive load within and throughout the lessons. Any other questions?
I have a question about that.
Sure.
So that breaks down to an extra 3 minutes of math per day if you divide that in 180 days. And I think about, as someone who's been on this journey for the past 3 years on the Teaching and Learning Committee of trying to get this schedule, I just don't know how I can support all of this. I mean, 3 years ago, the whole purpose of this schedule was to get more math. And I was looking through my notes 2 days ago or a couple days ago after we had our Teaching and Learning Committee, and I was looking through notes, and I was reading, Trudy, how at one point you had said we really need 80 minutes of math per day, consistent math per day.
I think I said 60.
60 minutes, sorry, 60 minutes. And now that we're going to 80 minutes every 2 days, I feel like we got off of our track at some point, because it was all about change the schedule to increase math, change the schedule to increase math. And Jory, you know I'm a huge fan of Middlebrook, but Jory just mentioned math like twice in his presentation, and I'm not quite sure how we went from the importance of increased time in math to changing the schedule to get 3 minutes of math extra per day.
Yeah.
And that's over if we did it every day. I know it's going to be 6 minutes every 2 days.
Right.
And I just don't know how that's going to help our ultimate goal, which was to try and get more math.
Again, there isn't a schedule that provides 60 minutes of math a day. If we could have gotten a schedule that had 60 minutes of math a day, that would have been my first choice. None of the options that could have provided anywhere close to 60 minutes could have been done without decimating or completely changing the way we deliver stride classes, the way we deliver other services, and impact other parts of the schedule, like world language. It could have impacted the way we arrange the teams. So in the absence of being able to get 60 minutes, a block schedule, not simply adding 3 or 4 minutes per day a class, 3 or 4 minutes per day, you're right, isn't a big deal. A block schedule provides a concentrated period of time to engage in the kind of instructional routines that are necessary for students to learn math. And in this instance, I think we have to take the decision of not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good.
I guess I'm having a hard time, and I'm just trying to keep on math. I have a lot of questions for Jory, and I'm a big fan of the block schedule at the high school. I just don't see how a 6th grader who is 10 years old can sit through 88 minutes of math and have it be beneficial for anything but a small subset.
I would hope they're not sitting through 88 minutes of anything.
Standing, moving. I'm just using that as a technicality.
No, I understand.
In a room.
To be perfectly honest, it's not the way any of us were taught math, to be quite frank. It's not. I sat at a desk and it was fine. I loved math, so it didn't really matter. You could have put me in a math classroom for 3 hours and I would have been happy. But the point is that what the block schedule allows us to do, and it's true not just in math, it's across all disciplines, is to allow teachers to engage in those instructional routines that we know take longer, that result in students internalizing and what we call transfer learning, learning that sticks. Memorizing in the moment, as soon as they walk out the door, they forget it. This is a way to really build that foundation in math that can be done. I'm going to rely on the framers or the developers of this curriculum, who were authors of the Common Core. And they created a guidance around a block schedule that enables the curriculum to be delivered in a way that supports the philosophy and the intent of the curriculum. I am comfortable that that is the case.
So I'm just curious, and this is for Jordy later, I'll let anyone ask any other math questions, why 90% of our teachers disagree?
I think, my own opinion, I think they're excellent teachers. And I think if the world you know involves operating and teaching in a certain framework in a certain way for big chunks of our career, let's face it, we're blessed to have people who spend the bulk of their career in this district, right? It's scary. It's different. I know what I can do in 41 minutes. I'm not sure what I can do in 88 minutes. I think there's an unknown there. And it's the kind of thing as a team where we have to sit down together with support and map this out. I'm fortunate in that I have a map from the curriculum developers. I have a starting point, and we can work on it. Some of it won't work well, but we'll refine it and we'll make it work.
And again, I'm a huge fan of having more math. I just don't think that we're there yet. But I'll let anyone else talk about it.
Okay, so
Yeah, no, I said I'll let anyone else.
I'm just not getting it. And it sounds, and I don't want to add more work, but if I could see an example of how math works today at Middlebrook, because it seems like you get 45 minutes and you do a lesson. I mean, what Jory was describing is like, now we'll be able to do this and this and this and this. It just sounds like you're adding 6 minutes and adding a lot more, like you're raising the bar a lot. No, I'm just saying. And so, like if they have, lesson 1 on Monday and lesson 2 on Tuesday, now are they going to do lesson 1 and 2 and then wait? That's just, I just like to have a visual because I'm just not, and again, the block schedule at the high school I know it's gone really well. I was, I'm teaching learning, for that one, and it was, so I'm coming to this, I don't have any idea, right? But I just still not understanding. And if possible, I'd like to see, like, this is what we do currently, these 6 days, and this is what we're gonna do. And as I said, I hate to, I'm just not understanding. And I'm also not understanding, like, if you have 41 minutes on Monday, and then the children come back on Tuesday, it's been 24 hours, but now we're, so how much more powerful is a block period that the kids will then remember it for, because then they have a day where they don't have it for 48 hours, and it might just be me, maybe children are a lot, but that's another question is like, maybe I'm missing something, and I know I went to, middle school 100 years ago, but, if you don't get through everything on Monday, can't you do some of it on Tuesday, and then the block schedule is going to have the same issue. I just don't, because that's all.
We can put that together. I actually have 90% of that information
that would be
right
great.
now.
Yeah, and I'd also ask that this presentation get attached to our board docs agenda because I knew I was looking. This is my first board meeting in 12 months, and I couldn't find anything attached to any of our agendas that was there. So, do you mind, Lucille, attaching that? Thank you.
I'll follow up on Laura. When you're putting that together for us, I would love to have teachers be part of what we're going to see. I find very often on paper something sounds great, but then sometimes it's really our teachers who are the ones implementing it, and I would love to hear their voice and just kind of how they plan to implement it. Again, I'm glad that you're at a starting point at least, that you're not totally pulling this out of nowhere. But I ask this all the time in these meetings, like what we think at the top doesn't always translate onto our kids. For a change of this magnitude, I'd love to have some more input and just allow us to kind of see that all at the same time.
I think the comparison would help us. with what you're doing now and what you're planning to do, just so that those of us that haven't been in a middle school for many, many years and sort of have a handle on what you do now, but don't really see how the arc will work to the next level, to the bigger blocks, I think that would help us understand it. Because otherwise, we should probably go to Middlebrook and walk it through ourselves. Because this is very hard for us to wrap our heads around, because and not that you haven't done a wonderful job, not that I don't think this is a possibility, but I think for a lot of us to wrap our heads around it, we need to know what this is and then what you're planning to do, so that we have a better idea of what the arc is in the change. That I think would help us.
Will the stride courses be put together in the same block, so people's kind of fun, happy times would be together in period 1 or period 4?
Can we call it that? Can we call it fun, happy time? The idea of it is it's a 90-minute block, but it can be broken into 2 sections. So as far as the students are concerned, it's not going to feel too different. You're going from one stride to another stride. Our scheduling for it would just set up that they'd have the same opportunity to go through different strides. So right now it's sometime in the morning, sometime in the afternoon. Now it's a double block right there.
Yeah, so I think that echoes Laura's request to, like, let's mock it up. And so we'll, at the next board meeting, come back and really, kind of walk people through, here's what, Sawyer Smith's class is going to look like. His day's going to look like. The other piece, I asked, Karen to be here tonight too, because I think here are the issues, and to your question, I think one of the, and we heard some of that earlier tonight. One of the primary concerns of the Middlebrook faculty, as I understand it, is the potential reduction of staff with the integration of reading and writing, and so. I wonder if that wasn't a factor, if we would have, kind of such intense response to a transition to a block. I think, I take Trudy's word to the bank. I think, if this block schedule is going to meet the demands of the IM curriculum, it's going to meet the demands of the IM curriculum. I think you're right. Let's look at it and understand the difference between today and tomorrow. But with the other kind of major sea change that we're contemplating with the schedule is that integration. I think we're the only middle school that I'm aware of that continues to segregate reading and writing. And so, that, again, as Jory's saying all night, benefits and drawbacks. And so, Karen, would you mind, and, Chuck, maybe you also, why would we even talk about, integrating reading and writing? Why does that matter? And then how would we do that in a block schedule?
It's not dissimilar from what Trudy was explaining about math. Since I got here, Middlebrook teachers have been lamenting that workshop instruction isn't working for our middle school students. And they're referring to our comprehensive literacy framework. Instructional frameworks help us ensure high-quality instruction, but only if we're giving adequate time for the framework to be implemented. And the comprehensive literacy framework requires 60 to 90 minutes to orchestrate its components: the mini lesson, small groups, independent reading or writing, word study, read aloud, shared and close reading. It's a lot of plates to keep spinning in the air, and to try to do that in 41 minutes has led to teacher frustration. It's led to student frustration. Teachers have had many lessons that require more demonstration than it would if kids could get into it and be coached while they were there, rather than get into it at home without the support of their teacher. So the mini lessons end up not being many. There's insufficient time to address misconceptions, to build background knowledge, to refine skills, to develop vocabulary and language experiences, to provide fertile ground for new learning. Students are frustrated because they don't have time to read or write in class and receive tailored instruction to meet them where they are and grow them to grade levels standards. Their reading lives have atrophied. one of our department members recently did her doctoral study on how the volume of reading that our students are doing, and it is just paltry. They're crying for time to apply what they're learning in reading workshop on their own. Our middle school teachers have been working very, very hard to meet district expectations, like the 80% last year, and they did that. And now they're aiming for 85% this year, and their efforts are commendable. The collaboration between ELA and social studies last year allowed more of the framework, the instructional framework for literacy, to be implemented because we were able to do shared and close reading and vocabulary in the content area. But we need shared and close reading in ELA as well, in literary texts. We need that vocabulary work in literary texts as well. So just in the content area is not sufficient. Social studies also need space for literacy in the content area, but they also need to flesh out their own frameworks and their inquiry design model. And we need to give the teachers the time they need and not expect them to make insufficient time work. The second fall I was here, I think some central office staff were invited to a meeting of A grade levels writing teachers and reading teachers. And they expressed a lot of their frustration. They expressed a desire to have time in class for students to read and for students to write. They expressed a desire to have enough time to read aloud to students so that they could model and demonstrate the work in an authentic text. They named that it was nearly impossible to get small group instruction in a 41-minute period, and they expressed that teaching ELA would be easier if they knew both courses' curriculum. So the block schedule eliminates redundancies, maximizes the connective tissue between reading and writing, and it negates the instructional decisions made by one teacher in one course negatively impacting the other course and the learning in the other course. And we've had a few instances of that happening over the last couple of years. And more than anything, it eliminates our students being over-taught and under-practiced. They need more practice with what they are learning.
I could not add to that. That was beautiful. And I would just remind you that meeting we had where the teachers explicitly said they wanted to teach reading and writing as a single course.
Can I just pop in and say that that's segregating those two is pretty recent, because my youngest child finished Middlebrook in 2014 and she took RWW in English. So it hasn't, that's 8 years, I guess, but it's not as if we've always done it separately, so we did have other models and other ways of doing things, so maybe that doesn't affect the block decision, but it's not as if.
Joy, what I'm really stuck on, and I wanted to thank the teachers who stood up today and who sent letters, I'm really stuck on that 90% of teachers. And I also am really stuck on the skills. So I just want to break it down and make sure I'm understanding it. So right now we have forced choice. So, for example, I've been at Middlebrook for 5 years. My daughter took intervention. She wasn't able to take, I think she took art, or you can't take 2 strides if you're taking intervention or if you have any type of special ed, correct? Because you're in that. So I guess my first question is, do we have a lot of students and parents complaining about the forced choice? Because that seems to be a driver here as well. Have you had a...
Yes, short answer, yes, but the longer answer is it hasn't really been an option. It's not a...
Because to me, it was almost a gift. Yeah, to me, it was a gift that there was intervention to really work on math. So I was a little surprised about that. But this skills I'm really stuck on this skills class. Now, if we could offer skills in, say, robotics or engineering or something that was elevating our students, I think that would be great. But I haven't seen, and I know we've talked about this again, Jen and I have been on teaching and learning for 3 years. We've been on this journey with you guys. I just don't see how a child sitting for 88 minutes, and I wrote down what you said: enrichment, passion projects, transdisciplinary capstones. I think that's great for the unicorns who are really self-motivated, who can sit there and, I have 88 minutes, I'm going to read ahead and be prepared for next week. But I feel like the majority of the kids are I'm not understanding what they're doing in that skills, whether it's extra homework. You know, as a parent, I don't know that I necessarily want my child, I like to see them do their homework at home, and I like to see where they are, and I like to see their struggles and their successes. I'm really stuck on the skills. And I think the block is the right way to go. I understand why we're doing ELA. I just don't understand how 2 88-minute blocks of time can be creatively used without, again, having some equity issues.
So I think there's a lot more than just the unicorns than you think, first of all, because that opportunity to create that environment where students can work together on something is not limited to the unicorns.
And who's creating it? The teachers are creating that environment? I mean, so the teachers have to then create like a plan and a schedule for that environment during skills?
So they've always, I'm trying to answer two different questions here, I think. You know, it's what did it look like versus what do we want it to look like, right? You know, so anytime we have had any kind of passion projects or any kind of capstone work, it means, if not putting a pause on the curriculums across the board, it's how do you integrate what it is that's happening in those curriculums as part of the capstone project. Some do it better than most. You know, I want to, at the risk of just pausing in the question, is I don't know that I did enough in this to celebrate the work that the staff has been doing. You know, we talked about the problems with the 41-minute schedule, and maybe it's more a celebration of just how fabulous they are at it. So I agree with you. It's messy right now to know what is that skills block going to look like. What I've certainly heard for years and years and years from our staff is we don't have enough time. And that don't not have enough time fits into a lot of reasons. And you talked about that list of those things I talked about. But also, just that time to have a help desk moment with a teacher. And that's not just a child who's a struggling writer, but it's a child who is writing an essay comparing Thoreau to Steinbeck to their father. So there are moments when students need to have that moment where they are sitting with their teacher and working it through, or an opportunity to really workshop an essay with them, that this would provide that opportunity to do that. Because right now, the only times those are happening are before school, after school, during lunch, in some cases during a tutorial. So creating an opportunity where that's built in during the day, I envision that being a moment of being able to take a breath for everybody involved.
I guess I would just have to see it, again, like what that moment looks like what teachers are running, like what are the teachers doing during that moment, and I'm just stuck on that.
Wait, what's a unicorn? I don't mean to be stupid, but I'm
Sorry, I was just saying, like,
no,
I was saying some children who are just really able to be self-learners.
Are unicorns? Okay.
I'm just using that as an example.
That's how I heard it, and that's what
Yes.
I'm going with it.
Yeah.
I hope that's all right.
No. Okay. The 10-year-old who can sit and spend 88 minutes doing their one thing by themselves.
I think some of what I'm hearing is that it would be really helpful for us to have a complete picture of what this would look like beyond the Excel spreadsheet, something more that walks the day in the life. I think it would also be really great if we could arrange for that walk in the day of the life to actually happen in the school for those that are able to make that work in their schedules, in addition to having it kind of fleshed out on paper. I know that I recently spent some time in math classes, 8th, 7th, and 6th, and was just blown away by the work that the teachers accomplish and that the students accomplish in those 41 minutes. But also remember noticing timers being carried around and
the next 30 seconds, think about this, and then in the next 2 minutes, we're gonna transition to this, and everything just being really structured, and a mistake happening in the work, and so that limited the homework, so they can go back, and have time in the next class to kind of adjust the thinking and correct the work. So I am, the fact that illustrative math does provide for the fulfillment of the curriculum within a block format is something that I think is beneficial and worthwhile. That if that model is already there and it meets those priorities and those objectives and those expectations and has been used, I think it would be really helpful perhaps if there is a contingent of illustrative math users with a block schedule. I don't know if there's a way that we could have a conference call or for the teacher, set up a way for faculty to be able to talk to other faculty who use that model and ask questions and see how that works. And I think then we also need, this is big, and we're hearing it, and the community is first hearing it, and I think we all need some time to, I would also love to see a little bit more understanding of the skills block and what the skills like, what you envision the skills block looking like next year, and also perhaps what the skills block could look like 3 years from now. Where you see that time, how that may or may not evolve. And then I do have some questions about the integration of the ELA curriculum and the work that may need to be done to coordinate that. And is there enough time? And is there perhaps a schedule that you maybe can provide on what professional development will look like over, the next six to 8 months on all fronts to make sure that we're employing enough resources to make this as successful as possible. I don't know if there's any other kind of pieces.
There's a major piece that we really haven't talked about at this table, and that was what the folks have led with, that have written. So, and I want to dispel a misperception. The motivation for contemplating a change is not the budget. We have been looking at bell schedules for years, well beyond any individual budget cycle. That being said, there are real questions here. So in the language arts department is twice the size of every other core department. If language arts is integrated, at least in one model, you would have a single teacher. And so, that number 10 that was raised earlier tonight is not necessarily inaccurate. So you have 9 language arts staff that you wouldn't necessarily need in this model. The 10th that's being referred to, and I think, Mandy, your question about STEM, the other opportunity that we haven't even discussed tonight is with with a transition to a block and being able to address the mathematics curriculum in the block, that negates the need to run the data and stats class in the stride block. So it opens up a period now in the stride block, and as the few preliminary conversations we've had, we've also, we're in the middle of a STEM review, and we know that we have a gap in the curriculum at Middlebrook, and so there's an opportunity here to provide, again, we would probably lean on Fran to write the course proposal, but to address coding, robotics, all of those things that we have been talking around, but really haven't come up with a meaningful way, at least at Middlebrook, to really to address. And
So that would go in the stride block, not the skills, because that can't go in the skills.
Correct. Well, so I think, just to be fair about the skills block, I mean, right now, I see that as a concept more than anything.
Right.
And so it's, you heard Jory
That's why I
explain,
can't
it's
wrap my head around it.
chock full of opportunities. But, the bigger picture here, it just, where I would choose to live with is there's time in the day to do some things that we at present don't have time to do. What those things are, I think, could run your imagination. But I don't want to lose sight of the fact that, just on the back to the staff piece for a second, in one scenario, right, we could opt to reduce staff by 10. That is one possibility here if this schedule goes forward. We need to be totally upfront and honest and transparent about that, because I think otherwise it would be, disingenuous. So there are budget implications. We just need to name that. And so, as you're having those conversations, and I think, again, I'm not going to, the folks at Middlebrook can speak for themselves, but as I was, listening and reading, that was a major question that I heard, and, what about our colleagues and how's that all going to work out? We have been working on, what that would look like. We've got several scenarios that we're looking at that, have implications across the district. And so that's something, I think, after the first of the year, as we move forward, we'll keep that as part of the conversation as well.
Because also registration is going down.
The student enrollment's declining. Yes. So next year is the just various cohorts move through. Yeah. The largest student decline across the district we'll see at Middlebrook next year.
But Kevin, one thing you said that I wanted, because I'm stuck on the skills, that I've had so many conversations with parents about, there's only so much we could do, because you can't offer some robotics class or something within that skill set, because not every student will have the ability to go to that skill set.
Yeah, so if you were looking at like a universal offering now, so but there aren't going to be. I don't want to walk too far down that road.
No, I
because
know,
it's
but when
concept.
you said there's like lots of options, limitless
Well,
options
there
to
are.
that skill.
There are, but it's for whom and when.
Right.
So, one of the key points here that Jory raised that I think is an important one, and right now you have kids who are having to opt out of stride, and so as part of, go back to the Middlebrook philosophy, right? Exploration is a key part of that. We want kids to be exposed to lots of things, but because of the constrictions on the day, there is, as he calls it, forced choice.
Right.
And so this would, alleviate a lot of that pressure, and I think that's great. And to go back before, I think what we saw coming through the pandemic as we were talking about offering intervention, because of the pandemic, I think we had many more parents who were opting into intervention. But I remember prior to that time, we had lots of folks whose kids legitimately could use some extra support. They didn't want to give up some of the stride offerings. And so now you are not reaching kids you need to reach because of the structure of the day.
Right.
And that, to me, is a problem, too.
No, and I totally agree. I just am stuck on, I just don't want a bunch of kids sitting in a room trying to figure out what
I
to
hear
do
you.
with their time.
None of us do.
That's my fear.
Yep, none of us do.
And so once we, and I know we talked about this at length on the Teaching and Learning Committee, but once we see what that looks like, I think I'll feel a little bit better.
Can I ask one last question? Assuming that's something we need to. Is this conversation, and all of this seems pretty final to me, that this is kind of our plan, maybe with some tweaks. So is this kind of what we're committing to with some tweaks, or is there a possibility that we can say no to all of this and keep everything as is?
Well, you're the Board of Ed, and you can put it up for a vote and decide. I will tell you, I have participated in scheduling conversations for more than half the years I've been here, and I will also tell you, in full candor, they have produced schedules that I have objected to and nixed because I didn't appreciate the cheating of stride time and some other features in some of these different schedules. This is the only model to date that I'm aware of, unless I missed a meeting, that meets the goals that we have laid out and have been talking about for multiple years. And again, I want to be really respectful to the staff here and the staff in this building. There's a cost to that, but when we talk about the opportunities to serve kids, one of the things we don't talk about is creating opportunities for kids to think deeply. We don't talk about opportunities for adults to think deeply because we don't have time. And so there are trade-offs, but what a block does, and I would defer to my high school colleagues here, is create time. And it's concentrated time to work through an instructional framework. Those frameworks explicitly address opportunities for kids to think. So I think this is the model that's the right model. And, Jory's right, and, there was another gentleman who mentioned he had done a little bit of research. If you look at the research on block scheduling, schedules relative to, student achievement outcomes are agnostic. It's what you do with the time that matters. So did that answer your question, or was I just talking too much? Sorry.
But we can discuss it more than.
Of course, yes. It's not. No one's expecting a vote today.
No, but I mean,
Well,
I don't even want
this has been 4 years. This is not the beginning.
And I'm trying to be fair in terms of time constraints. We're starting budget conversations in January, and I know that this wasn't a decision based on a budget, but it does have pretty significant budget implications.
Yeah, and you don't need to decide
that
tomorrow.
much time to sit here and chat about it.
We don't have months.
Right.
You have more. Well, you have more than a month, and I think. And here's just in fairness to the question in the process, as I'm developing a proposal, I'll give you a couple of proposals. One will be a status quo at Middlebrook, and I'll lament it. And another will be, scratch all of that. I will give you what a budget looks like, with the staffing intact and without, and with some modifications. Because we have some other, when you look across the district, as we've already talked about, you're going to hear me repeat in a minute, we have staff sitting in grants. The grants are expiring. So there's a lot of pressure on the budget. And so we'll just be, we'll just put it all on the table so we don't lose track of it as you're looking at this, okay?
So, and we can also, just because the next scheduled meeting is January 12th, doesn't mean we can't schedule a meeting before that.
Were you planning to bring us to a vote on January 12th?
Yeah, you just scheduled January 4th, Jill.
Yes.
Right, so.
Yeah.
Just trying to
Running
be
out of
practical,
days.
Right, we're running out of time, and I want to be fair to the whole process and to teachers, but we are. I mean, we're going on break. We're here next week, we're going on break. Technically, we can't talk outside of the meeting, so, I mean, realistically.
Yeah. So, I don't know that you need to add a meeting between now and the 12th. And I say that seriously, because you're going to be spending a lot of time together. you guys, really good questions tonight. We knew walking in the door, there's additional work to do. They need the time to do the work. Okay?
We just have to flush it out.
Yeah.
But I think it'll, just through the month of January and until you're satisfied with your questions, it'll just remain on the agenda. And you'll have a workshop coming up with Jory as part of the budget, and I think this would factor as part of that conversation too, so there are times.
Does anybody else have anything that they want to put out before?
May I ask sorry.
Yes.
But like, Jenna, you've been talking for 3 years in teaching and learning, and so students feel confident. Sorry, not to be, like, do you feel like you've had enough time? Because I've obviously haven't been part of that, so I don't know. But you guys must have a lot more
We
information.
spent all last year talking about it.
Well, we spent
And you
3
spent
years,
even
yeah.
more years.
And so at the table, there was a lot of discussion.
The concept, I like the concept. I can see where it could be very good for kids. The depth of learning could be much more accelerated and much more able to go into depth when you have more time. 41 minutes, as we all know, goes like that. Especially that's really a hard thing to get into depth about, especially if you've been introduced a concept and then you want to go deeper. 41 minutes isn't going to do that.
I would love to see a pilot with like a couple 10-year-olds and what happens in 88 minutes with a 10-year-old, because I teach church school.
That's what you're worried about, is the attention span of...
Yeah, I mean, 88 minutes. I don't think I can sit here. I'm having a hard time 88 minutes sitting here, talking about multiple things. I mean... I would love to see, I think there's a lot of work that has to be done
Yeah.
still.
You have to look at the instructional frameworks, because the frameworks speak to how time is distributed. So
Right, and I think
would-
that's what I have to
Yeah,
see more.
and I would
is-
just be really careful about this idea of sitting for 88 minutes.
Sorry, sitting, standing, walking,
Well,
moving.
how about engaged in learning?
Engaging. Okay,
right,
I
which
have a
is-
hard time engaging in most things for 88 minutes, so.
Okay, to that point though, yes, we've got great teachers, but we have some teachers who that's going to be much easier for than for others.
Yeah.
So now you're
And some
going back
students-
into a lot of, some children this may find to be successful, and others it's not going to be, just because of the way it's being delivered to them, which again goes back to, I think we have a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah.
Right, and finding time to make sure that all of our teachers are, have the time to kind of get up to speed and where they need to be. And to answer your question.
No, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but
No,
what
you're
I'm
not.
hearing
It's
is
fine.
that the two of you from Teaching and Learning still have questions.
Yes.
I think that, and Trudy, you
And that's
honestly
probably
said it
all I
perfect.
need
There
to
is no
know.
perfect answer.
There is
to
no
any of this.
perfect.
I mean, they all stink. I mean, there's no perfect way to make any of this work. And
But you create pretty compelling arguments for it.
minus the other questions that we still have.
Of course.
Jory, you feel that for Middlebrook, concerns aside, this is the right thing for this school?
Yeah, because you can't put the concerns aside. I want to make sure that the staff
I meant
are-
even with the concerns, even given the concerns, you feel that this is the right thing for this school?
Yes.
For now and for moving forward?
Yes, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get there.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to see more support from the teachers, because that 90% is worrisome.
So I see that slightly differently in that we have a wonderful, beautiful, passionate staff that want to get it right and want to do it right. And they have questions, and I don't have answers for some of the pieces, but there are other parts where they need to understand it and see it for themselves to know that, yep, I can do it right. And we are, let's be honest, I think most of us are change averse also. And I don't think they're any different than that. So there are a lot of competing moments relative to that. So the fact that you're hearing that from the staff, I'm hearing it too. They're talking to me as well and saying the same thing. I get it. I understand it completely.
And I know at the high school, when they managed to pull off a pilot, it laid a lot of uncertainty and anxiety to rest. So if there's any way to pilot this and make it more concrete for everyone.
Damien and Toby seem to have a way through that we have not talked through yet.
No pressure.
I don't see it. Well, it's not no pressure, but I mean, it's they have ideas that they themselves haven't been able to test just yet. So, in the end, we have five classes happen at a time on team now. 5 classes on a team are going to happen in this new schedule. So I see that way through. But the removal of one ELA class means what happens to those kids. So that's the part of it that we need to make sense of, obviously. Because you can't just say, all right, that class is going to be the skills class, and then that's a trade-off, because then it defeats the whole purpose of, unless we're able to say, all right, we'll go ahead and try that, but we won't worry about what happens in skills, because that'll just be the second ELA class. I mean, we could do that. It's one way to do it, kind of without a lot of,
I think if the purpose is
juggling.
to give people some sense of whether it could work, that might be an option.
We're open to it. I personally, I love the idea of being able to pilot it. Years ago, when we had a schedule we were starting to play with, we were talking about doing a pilot. Because I agree, there can be a lot of benefit from that. All the unintended consequences that you don't foresee, that helps to
Actually
do.
do it.
Good and bad.
Yeah.
Unintended.
This will work and this doesn't work.
Right.
But you can see both as you do it.
Right.
I think it also just takes time, because I remember last major discussion we had, it was if we removed an ELA class and used that time for math. So in my head, that's kind of where I was thinking, and this is like a major, I mean, I feel like we've gone from one step to another step, and I know we've had discussions along the way, but to see from that mind frame of a second ELA class is now used for math to, this is a significant change.
It is.
Jory, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Trudy. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you.
Great. I propose to move that we table the ELA update. But we do have can you just mind give the board a very brief update on the waiver process, just kind of all of the chatter around reading?
I'll try my best not to be sarcastic about this. In the state's infinite wisdom, they have decided to require districts to adopt certain reading programs K through 3. This is based upon the fact that many, many students across the state of Connecticut are falling below benchmark. I would point out that over 50% of those students are in alliance districts that are run by the state. And so now the state is telling us what to do. I'm sorry, I'm just
No, it's fair.
as honest as I can be.
That's really not sarcastic.
But is there an opt-out, or?
Well,
Apply for a waiver,
That's why not.
which I believe we are going to do.
yes.
Yes.
That just came. The application landed tonight at 5:30.
So this is complex. I want to do my due diligence and really look at these 5 programs, but that's a long process. I'm not going to advocate for a change unless I'm sure that change is not going to impact our students negatively. I would point out that we are doing a pretty good job growing our kids academically, and we were going to show you some of that data. It also has significant fiscal implications, from $250,000 to $500,000 to adopt these programs. So I want to do this thoughtfully. My sense is the program that we have in place is the best program we have for our students. But I'm not going to dismiss those other programs until I have time to really dig into them and look at it. This all seems very, very rushed and last minute, and influenced by groups of people that aren't actually looking at every district, if that makes sense. I do think there are some districts that maybe the state needs to pay a heavier hand in watching what they do. I don't think we're one of them.
What is our success rate for the waivers? Does it?
So there was our initial round of waiver applications, and it was a weird waiver because you had to. Oh my God! I'm just trying to remember what the first one. You had to demonstrate that you were meeting, these provisions in the law, but even the waiver application was problematic, so the state wound up pulling it back. And they heard from a lot of us across the state about the problems with this particular law. The mandate that every district in the state adopt one of these 5 pre-approved programs and then implement them beginning next year. So, that's the set of challenges. To Chuck's point about just wanting to do diligence, we would never run out and be like, oh yeah, we're going to go pick this program and implement it next year. We study things for quite a long time. It's the right thing to do. The concern the state's responding to in this right to read legislation is a good one. And if you look at the number of third graders across the state who aren't meeting proficiency, it's a problem. But it's not the same problem here. We were just earlier today looking at some of our kindergarten data. So the kindergartners just took the map for the first time this week, and one of the areas they're assessed on is foundational skills. And so it was like 75% of the kids met proficiency on that. So it speaks to the strength of our program doing what the legislation is demanding, which is teach kids, phonics, phonemic awareness, so on. So, there's a lot to it, but we'll go through the waiver application, we'll do our diligence, and then we'll see. And, we've had a lot, between, I think probably more than a couple of us in the room, have had a lot of conversations with our colleagues across the region, and, people are all feeling very similarly, particularly the Durgay districts. We've invested a lot of time, a lot of training, a lot of money in the programs we have. We feel good about them. They've gotten better over time. We've responded substantially to the calls for, science of reading programs. So we're doing good work, and I think it's just it would be really poor leadership to dump all of that work now and go in a direction that has it seems to be working for some places in Mississippi, I guess, but not for around here.
And in fact, some of those programs were mandated in states that have some of the lowest achievement in the country. So
so there's just real question marks about why the particular programs were picked.
The waiver landed, we'll fill it out.
Oh, you just wanted a summary? Yeah. Yes. You didn't want us to complain about the State Department of Education?
Yes, well, we can, but being that it's past 9 o'clock.
Yes, yes.
Do you want Chuck to come back and do the
We
rest
will
of the
schedule.
things?
Yes.
We'll reschedule, Chuck, for you to go through the ELA and the science of reading and all, and all that.
Yeah, we have to send like flowers or a gift or something nice to Rosemary, who sat here very kindly for 2 hours, who's going to present.
Thank you, Rosemary. Oh. So, budget.
Okay, so we sent you just a goals and assumptions document. Very quickly, when we talk about specific budget goals, what do we want the budget to do? I think the budget is the financial expression of our values and our goals. So we are looking to put together a budget that is sufficient to maintain and improve the high quality of education provided pre-K to 12. We need to have funds that will enable us to continue to address unfinished learning, support SEL and trauma-informed instructional practices. So within that, we need to pay attention to class size staffing, professional learning, program initiatives. We've set a goal, a target around raising student achievement, so we need to have the resources to do that. I'll talk about this in much more detail later on after the first of the year, but we're looking at providing funds to develop a 10-year facilities master plan to address this facility, Middlebrook, Ciderville. And then we need to continue to support the program and curriculum development connected to the Portrait of the Graduate, including the new course proposals that you all approved earlier this year.
I had a question about that. Are there additional proposals coming in, or those are the ones that we already discussed?
You got them. And we set that up by design, so you have them
Got it,
in
because
front
they
of
had a
the...
minimal budget impact, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so there was, I think, the
Yeah, like I just didn't know if there was more coming that might have a stronger impact.
if we go forward with another ASL class, we might need to support that with some additional FTE, because we have one awesome teacher.
Right.
And, she's in very high demand.
Yeah. Yep. And everyone I know in 8th grade is taking ASL next year.
It's listen.
My 5th grader is already ready to sign up.
Right. So I included for you the enrollment. I do want to call out for the board. I was always grateful to Ellen Esmond for presenting her enrollment numbers. The kindergarten number was bothering me, and it was bothering me because it was pretty substantially discrepant from the projection that Mylone and McBride had offered for next year in their 2021 projections. And so I went back to that demographer. I gave him Ellen's report, and I said, can you just help me figure this out? And what he came back with was, in Ellen's report, she understated the actual birth rate for the 2018 birth year. And so when you factor that out by a multiple of 2, you get the discrepancy. It was like, I don't know, 40 kids or something like that. And so what he said was, he thought like 255 was a really solid, kindergarten projection. So his original projection a year ago was 261. Ellen's was very low. And so I plugged in 255, and that's the number we're going with. And so you'll only see that in my projections, as I take the two pieces. But I thought it was just important to know, because projections are, there's different projections out there. But just in terms of the assumptions, we also know as the current students are shifting, we're going to have an increase in student population in Cider Mill that will necessitate the addition of 2 classrooms, and so we have to budget for that. We settled the teacher's contract, which was great. The contracted salary increases, certified teachers plus everybody else, we're looking at somewhere between 1.95 and 2.3 million add if we assume, current budget. And so I tried to provide for you just what that means in terms of percentage increases. So just the contracted salary increases alone could be, a 2 to 2.3% add to current budget. And I use current budget just to give you an understanding of, the magnitude here. We also, as we've talked about before, we're carrying a number of salaries in the ESSER grant that's expiring at the end of this year, so we have some decisions to make. Within that ESSER grant are 2 Miller Driscoll classroom teachers. We need to hold on to them because we need them, so we have to build those in our budget. The other positions that are there are a psych position and a math interventionist at Cider Mill. So I just got the cost center proposals earlier this week, and I haven't gone through them all, but I'm assuming the requests are to hold on to those. But again, we're going to have decisions to make about some of these staff that we added in response to the pandemic.
Kevin, all 4 of those are at Cider Mill?
No, 2 teachers.
No.
2 Cider Mill teachers, a psych and an interventionist at Cider Mill?
2 in the grant, 2 Miller Driscoll classroom teachers,
Miller Driscoll,
a psych and
Math
an
at Cider Mill.
interventionist. Yeah, and there's actually, I put the grants together. There's 2 separate grants.
Yep.
But all of the ESSER grants are expiring.
Yep.
And then, the other just the trends that we're seeing. So electricity is up 52%. Diesel fuel is up 150% year over year. We're looking at actuals. Natural gas is up slightly less, about 20%. But all of those, also represent combined, almost 0.6% to the budget. So suffice it to say, we have our challenges. Okay. The other piece we haven't talked about at all is healthcare, and I would just remind the board again. This year, if you participated in some of the negotiations, you saw what our current utilization is. It's much higher than it's been. So our plans costs are running really high right now. We have gone out to bid for a new carrier, and so that process takes some time. So we'll see what comes back, but we're forecasting anywhere between a 2 and 3% total add to the total budget just in healthcare costs alone. So that's a major dilemma for us also as we're contemplating total costs. And then there's all kinds of other stuff. So Dawn, shared the good news at the start of the meeting, right? We'll keep inviting her back. Good news only. So, there are some other bright spots, right? So we're increasing slightly the pre-K tuition, so that'll be increased revenue. We're looking to, open up our facilities for rentals again, so hopefully that will generate some additional revenue. So there will be some minor offsets in other places.
Have we not opened the facilities since COVID?
No, they've been available. We just haven't gotten the traffic in terms of rentals that we'd had pre-COVID.
Got it.
Yeah. So just process-wise, you guys know the date when you'll see a formal budget presentation. So I'll be working with all of you guys between now and then to kind of go through all the numbers and put it together. But I think we're looking at drivers that are of greater magnitude than I've seen in all the years I've been here. I know. I'm sorry.
The final item on the agenda is to review and discuss a proposal to add language to Board of Education Bylaw 9120, election of officers.
Staff in the room, please, this is internal, everyone, if you want to go, because after this, the meeting is going to wrap up.
Public comment.
There's another public comment after that, but first, yeah. Are you okay with tabling it? Okay.
I move that we remove that item from the agenda.
So moved.
And put it on the future January 12th agenda.
Yeah. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? That brings us to public comment. Is there anyone in the room or online for a public comment? that the Board of Education meeting is adjourned at...
Hold on, there's-
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. I didn't...
So excuse my shirt, because I talked at the beginning, but I was gonna, look, I just want to again reiterate, to me, I thought this was a very thoughtful presentation tonight on the schedule change, and so I appreciated that. I think for me, I'm still left with the conclusion that it's really not a schedule change, it's a curriculum change. It's the combination of reading and writing. It's the introduction of the skills block, which is ill-defined. And I'm still left wondering, Mr. Higgins said that there'd be 5 classes before and still 5 classes today. So the other thing that just doesn't connect for me is how you get a budget with fewer overall teachers unless not a teacher's in that room. And so I just don't understand it, and that's still my question. It just feels like the reading and writing curriculum has to change in order for it to fit in 50% less time, and I don't understand how it's going to happen. And I don't understand what's happening with the skills block, and that's why I want you, the board, to continue to push and just figure out how does this actually work. Because, like I said, I've got a 6th grader and an 8th grader, and so my 8th grader is no longer impacted by this, but my 6th grader will be, and so yeah, I've got a vested interest, and I'll acknowledge that. But it's just, I really want to see a thing here that makes sense for the students, and it gets them, we, in the same meeting, we just said that we're the best district in the state. And so I just keep coming back to, what are we fixing? And I don't get it. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments in the room? Hearing none, we will adjourn the meeting at 9:16.
Welcome to tonight with
So, did you want to tell her I ran into